So welcome back, my wonderful subscribers and viewers. I'm so sorry it has taken a long time before coming back. I was so busy. Thank you for your understanding. In a small forgotten village, deep in the heart of Nigeria, surrounded by thick forests and whispering winds, lived a wealthy man named Mr. Jonathan. He had 3 children, David, Rose, and Samuel. The villagers often envied Mr. Jonathan's family because of their riches. But behind the smiled and polished home was a secret no one dared speak of, a deadly curse that had plagued the family for generations. It was said that Mr. Jonathan's grandfather once offended a powerful oracle after refusing to fulfill a promise. The oracle had cursed the family from the 3rd generation. Your children will carry the burden of your arrogance. They will rise like stars, but fall like thunder. But Mr. Jonathan, educated and a Christian, never believed in such things. He laughed at old tales and dismissed the warnings. David, the eldest son, was brave but stubborn. Rose was kind-hearted and loved by everyone, while Samuel, the youngest, was quiet and observant. Their mother, Mrs. Evelyn, always warned them never to wander deep into the forest behind their house, but one dry season, temptation overcame reason. It all began when Rose found an old woody box buried near the mango tree in their backyard. The box was strange, wrapped in red cloth and sealed with cowries. Instead of leaving it alone, the children opened it. Inside was a small clay idol, a mirror, blackened by age, and a note in ancient writing none of them could read. From that day, strange things began to happen. David would hear whispers at night calling his name from the forest. Rose began sleepwalking, her feet moody every morning. Samuel, who never cried at baby, started having terrifying dreams of fire and screams. Mrs. Evelyn sensed something was wrong. She went to the village elder, Mama Dorcas, an old woman who lived near the river bank. Mama Dorcas listened silently as Evelyn spoke, then sighed. "The curse has awakened," she said, her voice trembling. "You must stop the children from going near the forest, or worse will come." That night, the wind howled like wolves, and the moon hid behind dark clouds. The air smelled of rain, but it did not rain. David, restless and angry from a bad dream, wandered outside the house. The forest called to him, the voice soft and sweet. He walked into the darkness, barefoot, not knowing Rose and Samuel followed behind. The deeper they went, the stranger the forest became. Trees twisted like snakes, and the path behind them disappeared. Suddenly, an old woman appeared, sitting on a stone. She had no eyes, just empty sockets. that seemed to see everything. You are the cursed ones, she said with a cracked voice. You have awoken what should have stayed asleep. David tried to speak, but his mouth wouldn't open. Rose trembled. Samuel stepped forward and asked, "What do you mean?" The woman stood up slowly. "The idol you found belonged to Egbuno, the forest spirit. It is a sacred item of judgment. By opening the box, you accepted the curse meant for your bloodline." She pointed towards the center of the forest. "Now you must pass the theory test or be lost forever." Before they could ask more, the ground opened and they fell into a dark cave. When they woke, the old woman was gone, and in front of them stood a door made of thorns. The first test had begun. The thorns whispered lies. Your brother hates you. Your sister will betray you. Each step forward caused pain. David refused to move forward. But Samuel reached out and held Rose's hand. "Let's walk together," he said. They moved forward, despite the pain, and thorns vanished. Behind the door was a river of blood, the second test. A voice said, "Only the truthful shall pass. Speak your secrets." The children hesitated. David finally spoke. "I once wished Samuel would disappear because I thought he was useless." Samuel looked down, hurt but silenced. Rose confessed, "I took mother's necklace and blamed the maid." Samuel spoke last. "Sometimes I dream of fire and I enjoy watching things burn." The river parted. The voice said, "Truth frees the burden, but remember, one more test remains." The third test was the hardest. They entered a room filled with mirrors. Each mirror showed a twisted version of themselves. David saw himself as a violent king, Rose as a manipulative queen. Samuel saw himself burning the village. The voice returned, now angry. "Face yourselves or become what you see." David, proud and angry, shattered his mirror, but more grew in its place. Rose tried to cover hers, but it multiplied. Only Samuel stared into his reflection and said, "I am not you." His mirror cracked, and the others followed. A bright light filled the room, and the children were thrown out of the forest. Landing near their backyard, days had passed in the real world, and their parents had almost lost hope. They rushed to them, weeping and praying. But something had changed. David no longer heard voices, but he became more humble. Rose stopped sleepwalking, but she was more serious, less playful. Samuel, once quiet, now spoke with wisdom far beyond his years. Mama Dorcas visited again and asked them what they saw. They told her everything. She nodded slowly. "The forest had spared you, but the curse is not gone. It sleeps in your blood, waiting. That night, the box reappeared in their home, sealed again. The clay idol untouched. The children decided not to touch it again. They buried it under the mango tree, poured palm oil over it, and prayed with their mother. Years passed. David became a teacher and taught children about choices and consequences. Rose became a nurse, helping the sick and poor. Samuel became a priest, preaching about hidden battles and family burdens. But the story didn't end there. One rainy night, a stranger came to the village. She was a small girl with pale skin and bright eyes. She wandered into Mr. Jonathan's compound and asked for food. Evelyn, quiet as ever, fed her and gave her a place to sleep. The next morning, the mango tree was gone, uprooted as if a giant hand had pulled it. The ground where the box had been buried was empty. The children, now grown, knew something was wrong. The girl who said her name was Blessing had no family and didn't speak much. But that night, she would sit by the empty patch and talk in a language no one understood. Samuel confronted her. "Who are you?" She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. "I am the reminder," she said. "The curse never dies. It waits for weakness. It chose me next." David, Rose, and Samuel held hands and prayed. But this time, prayer was not enough. The sky turned red and winds roared. The box reappeared in their living room, wide open. The idol smiled. Voices returned. Rose screamed as shadows pulled at her feet. David fell to his knees, crying. Samuel stood firm, holding his Bible. "No, this ends now." He pours anointing oil on the idol and set it ablaze. Flames rose, not red but blue. The girl, Blessing, screamed, not in pain, but in release. "Thank you," she whispered as she vanished into light. The next morning, the sky was clear. The mango tree had returned. The idol was gone, and the box turned to ash. Mama Dorcas confirmed it. The curse had passed. The child broke what blood could not. From that day, the children of the Jonathan family lived a free life. But every year, on the night the box first appeared, they gather near the tree, light a candle, and remind themselves never awaken what sleeps beneath the soil. Years later, Samuel had become the village priest, respected not just for his wisdom, but for the strength of spirit that had once defied the darkness. But deep inside, he still felt something unfinished, like a door that had closed but wasn't locked. One evening, while sweeping the old church, he noticed a little boy staring at him through the open window. The child had strange eyes, one green, one black. "Father," the boy said, "do you still dream of fire?" Samuel froze. He rushed outside, but the child had gone, and the dust where the boy had stood was a small clay cowrie, just like the ones that once sealed the cursed box. Samuel's heart pounded. What is it again? Meanwhile, David, now married with a daughter named Grace, was noticing odd things around his home. His daughter kept drawing pictures of a black mirror and said her friend in the tree told her stories. At first, he dismissed it until she began drawing the exact idol they once owned. Rose, who had moved to a nearby town to work in a hospital, received a letter one morning. It had no stamp and no address, only a name written in red ink. Inside was a drawing of 3 children surrounded by fire. On the back it read, "The forest never forgets." They reunited again in the village, each bringing strange stories, each clutching memories they had tried to bury. They went to Mama Dorcas, now over 100 years old and barely able to walk. Her voice was weak, but her words still carried weight. "I warned you," she said. "The cause was never a person. It is a spirit that feeds on fear and secret. You silenced it with the truth, but now a new voice has called it back." Samuel asked, "What do we do?" Mama Dorcas coughed hard, then said, "Find the first promise, the broken vow that birthed the curse. Only then can you bury its shadow." Mr. Jonathan, now old and frail, finally confessed, "My grandfather promised the oracle a child in return for power. But when time came, he gave a goat instead. He laughed at the gods." His voice broke. "I always thought it was just a story. I was wrong." That night, thunder rolled again over the village. Grace disappeared from her bed. David woke up screaming. A trail of small footprints led into the forest, the same one they had entered as children. Without hesitation, David, Rose, and Samuel packed small sachets with water, salt, palm oil, and a single candle each. Clues Mama Dorcas had once told them were sacred. As they stood at the edge of the forest, the winds whispered again and the trees swayed like they recognized them. "This forest is alive," Rose whispered. The path that had once vanished years ago reappeared narrow, lined with dying leaves and lit by fireflies that blinked in patterns like signals. Samuel clutched his Bible. David held a small cutlass, and Rose carried a white scarf that belonged to Grace. With each step, the forest seemed to breathe around them. Strange animals, sound echoes in the distance. They passed a tree with a child dressed, nailed to its back. The fabric floated in windless air. Rose trembled. "That's Grace's dress." A voice sang gently in the distance, soft, childish, and haunting. "I am with the root. I'm with the trees. Come and find me, if you please. They hurried forward, hats raising. The air was thicker now, filled with the scent of wet clay and ashes. Suddenly, the path slipped into three. Each one bore a symbol, a hand, an eye, and a flame. We must choose, Samuel said. But we can't separate again. No, David answered. This is the cause trying to divide us. It feeds on isolation. We walk the middle path together. They stepped onto the path marked with the eye. Instantly, they were surrounded by illusions, visions of their worst memories. David saw himself burying Grace. Rose saw herself watching her mother die. Samuel saw flames consuming the church. Don't believe it, Samuel shouted. It's not real. But the visions intensified, and the forest began to cry. Yes, cry. Loud sobs, echoes from the trees. Then a figure stepped out. It was Blessing, the strange girl who vanished in blue fire years ago. But she looked older now, her eyes hollow, her skin cracked like bark. Did you frame me? If you won't return, she asked, a voice like leaves brushing stone. We came for Grace, David shouted. She's already chosen, Blessing replied, smiling. The ground cracked beneath their feet and the forest floor opened, swallowing them into darkness once again. They landed in a massive cavern filled with roots that twisted like living snakes. In the center was Grace, floating above a pool of black water, her eyes glowing. Welcome, said a voice that wasn't Grace. It came from everywhere. You bring your past. You bring your regrets. You bring your broken promise. It was a spirit, the curse itself. The water began to rise. Roots tried to drag David away, but he hacked at them with his cutlass. Rose threw salt at the creeping shadows, and they hissed. Samuel stepped forward, raising his Bible very high. Spirit of broken vows, he declared, you have no power over those who confess their wrongs and walk in light. The spirit laughed. Then confess your greatest sin, Samuel, the one you buried even deeper. Samuel hesitated. The air froze. Rose and David turned to him. Samuel. He looked down, tears in his eyes. When I was 10, I heard the forest call me. I went. I touched the idol. Before any of us did, I awakened it. Before you knew, it was me. Silence. Then a scream from Grace. The spirit wailed, its roots shivering. Truth again, it cried. Truth burns. Samuel walked into the pool. The water did not drown him. It parted. He reached for Grace. She blinked and collapsed into his arms. The pool dried instantly. The spirit's voice grew weak. I was born of lies, and you starved me. The idol appeared again. Whoa, but now cracked. David took the candle and lit it. Rose wrapped it in a white scarf. Samuel anointed it with oil and whispered, "By truth we end you." The idol melted into ashes. The carving shook. Above them, the forest let out a groan, a long, dying groan. They were lifted out by wind, gentle, glowing wind, and landed safely at the edge of the village. Grace coughed and opened her eyes. "Uncle Samuel, the trees are quiet now." They smiled, exhausted but relieved. The forest behind them shimmered once they turned to normal. They took Grace home, and for the first time in generations, the village celebrated. Drums were beaten, food was cooked, and people danced, not just for joy, but for freedom. Mama Dorcas passed away peacefully that same night, smiling in her sleep. Mr. Jonathan, now on his deathbed, blessed each of his children. "You did what I could not. You ended what we started." Grace grew up telling the story how her father, aunt, and uncle fought the forest with nothing but truth and unity. And every year, a tree was planted where the cursed mango once stood. A tree of peace, a tree with plague that read, "Let truth be our root, and love be our shield. The cause is ended, but the memory must remain." Years passed. Grace grew into a wise and radiant woman, just like her aunt Rose. She became a school teacher in the village and taught not just reading and writing, but also history. And the story she told most often was her own stories. She taught the children not to mock old tales, not to touch what they didn't understand, and above all, to always speak the truth, no matter how painful it seems. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Grace stood by the new peace tree with her own daughter, little Eliana. The tree had grown tall and strong. Birds nested in its branches, and its shade was cool and gentle. "Mom," Eliana asked, "is it true that trees can hear?" Grace smiled. "Some can, but even when they can't, our hearts always know when we are near danger. Listen to your heart and never ignore warnings." As mother and daughter walked back home, the wind danced around the tree, soft, calm, and full of peace. The forest never spoke again, and the curse that haunted generations was now only a tale told to warn and teach. But deep in the hearts of the earth, beneath roots and rivers, the spirit that had once fed on secret faded into silence, not destroyed, but forgotten. And as with all forgotten things, it waits. Moral lessons from the cursed children. Truth is power. No matter how deep a secret lies buried, speaking the truth gives it no power. The children overcame the curse not with weapons, but with honesty. Don't mock tradition. Folktales and old warnings carry wisdom. Dismissing ancestral knowledge can lead to unintended consequences. Unity defeats fear. The course tried to divide the siblings, but they overcame it by staying united. Togetherness is strength. Every action has a consequence. A broken promise from one generation can affect others. We must live responsibly, knowing that our choice ripple through time. Hearts must be pure to break strongholds. Only by confronting their darkest truths and purifying their intentions were they able to defeat the spirit. The past should not be buried without resolution. Ignoring or covering up history does not erase its effects. Healing begins with acknowledgement and correction. Even children can carry wisdom, raises innocence. Samuel's quiet strength and Ruth's compassion played crucial roles. Never underestimate a pure heart. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel.